want to ask you as a mayor, what will you do and what do you want to do regarding crime, water crisis in South Africa, because these issues are not changing?
What is it that the mayor can do to try and come up with a solution to help us so that we are faced with less deaths and then, it's just a safe environment for all?
The problem that we faced was hijacked buildings, noise pollution, and overall disorderly behavior and people not abiding by the bylaws. To my question, what is the city doing to address that issue?
There's no water in Bedfordview. There's no water in Bryanston. And there's no water in this complex that I am here in Joburg. So there are many challenges that we're facing. Later on, the garbage picking up and everything. Let's start about the fundamental, which is water.
When it comes to school learners and parents looking for schools in general, it is a problem. Because you find that in a classroom, we've got like around 70 kids sitting in class and all kinds of things. So I feel like this is really not being prioritized as we are trying to make sure that our young people are being educated.
Well, we can hear so many concerns by the residents of the City of Johannesburg when it comes to the City of Joburg and service delivery. But quite incredible, topping that list is water supply at the moment. And so many different suburbs are complaining that they have no water. Well, that's just one of the many issues that we're going to hopefully get to speak about with the Mayor, Dada Morero, who joins us right now here in, I suppose, our makeshift studio in the wilds. Yes. Mayor, thank you for driving through and joining us here in the wilds this morning. Before we get into very pressing issues, and there really are quite a few, this is one of the spots. I mean, this is an amazing partnership that we've seen, both the private, the public, and government coming together to make an area work. And this is, I must say, one of the great examples that Joburg, what we can achieve in Joburg.
Yes, of course, part of the programs that we said we should do is to intensify on partnerships with the private sector. In that way, we believe that we will be able to maintain facilities of the city. And this is one of the facilities where there's partnership. And as you can look, it's beautiful. The view up there, I'm told, is also beautiful. Yeah. So I would like residents to visit. There's a hiking spot, and they'll have an opportunity to have a better view of how Johannesburg looks like.
Indeed, there's no denying it. Johannesburg, under all of what is happening, is a beautiful city, and it needs to be saved. And that is, I think, what we need to talk about right now. So I want to get straight into the issues, and water seems to be the one that people are talking to a lot. And I'll read you a couple of the comments. In fact, I know that we'll put them on air as people are writing in. We'll put them up on the screen and people can read them. But if we look at Joburg and the infrastructure, over 60% of Johannesburg's water infrastructure has exceeded its life. And this is a big problem. Around half of the reservoirs are leaking or on bypass. Johannesburg Water has a 27 billion rand infrastructure renewal backlog. And who is struggling? The residents in the city, who are saying they are not getting water. In just 1 year, 1,100 water meters are stolen. 3,450 manhole covers have been stolen. Valves, hydrants are stolen. There are sewer blockages. The list is endless. We got big problems in Joburg, and I want to talk to you about what are you doing to fix this?
Well, I think first part of it is that there's a commitment that we have made in the city to deal with the backlog, to deal with infrastructure refurbishment, and hence we are looking at, I think, budgeting to respond to the challenges. One, you'd know that we are also building new infrastructure as we are trying to maintain the old. There's an infrastructure refurbishment program, especially focusing on the water infrastructure. And you'd know that, for example, we are building new reservoirs in Midrand area, because we're also trying to catch up with the development that has happened in the area so that we can avert water shortages in those areas. We are building the Brixton one, which is now being commissioned. It's now just undergoing testing. It should be able to be operational by the end of the month. It will ease the pressure in Region B. Yes, we do admit that the bulk of infrastructure requires refurbishment. We are now doing 22 of the reservoirs. There's about 45 in total. We are now doing these ones in this financial year, and we will carry them through to the next financial year. In that way, there's an indication that we are focusing on refurbishing the current infrastructure. And we do know that some of the residents are affected, and unfortunately in this period we had a reservoir, the Klipfontein Reservoir, which was affected. There was a leak, and it resulted in a number of areas affected, especially Midrand, Ekurhuleni, and parts of Tshwane. But with the system now recovering, it's taking a bit longer to recover. And once the system has recovered fully, we would see constant supply of water in those areas. We're pretty concerned about the Ekurhuleni portion, which has not had water for the longer periods. And the engineers and technicians are looking at how best we can balance that situation.
How long is this going to take? Because, Mayor, you promised us last year.
Well, Rand Water had indicated that we need about 10 full days since the leak was fixed for us to recover fully. So I think we should be reaching our 10th day, if I'm not mistaken, by Wednesday.
You're talking about one area. I'm talking about an entire city. I mean, since last year, since I can remember, there's been promises and promises of repairs and fixing and the infrastructure and the investment, and it never happens. And that, you know, we are now talking about a Midrand area. We heard somebody saying Bryanston. Others are talking Hyde Park, Sandton, all the areas that you look at leaks around the city and water gushing out for days and nothing is being done about this, and infrastructure that's leaking, and the amount of water that is being wasted, whereas people don't have water running out of their taps. This is not new. This is something that's been going on for some time, and all we hear are promises and never get delivery. So when do we stop promising and actually fix this, but really fix it?
Well, it will be not correct to say nothing has been done. For example, if the reservoir in Region B, Brixton, is completed, as I say, it's under commission, it means in that area you have now brought extra capacity to be able to store your water and be able to provide water. But we must also accept that in some instances, the system itself would collapse as a result of power failure or any other reasons that may cause it to collapse. And our task is to ensure that we intervene at that point and attend to the system. We must also accept that, yes, Johannesburg has grown. There's been a lot of developments taking place in the area, and the city must catch up in terms of its water and sewer infrastructure. In Soweto, for example, yesterday we were able to unlock the problem in the Snake Park, Doornkop area, and they now have water. They've not been having water for 7 days. I'm focused now with the teams at Parkmore areas to ensure that we can unblock the problems and deal with the valves in that area and be able to provide water. Unfortunately, the Klipfontein Reservoir actually contributed quite a lot to the situation that we find ourselves in, and it's our responsibility between ourselves as Joburg Water, Rand Water, and provincial government to ensure that we find a solution and push that the system recovers much quicker. But at the same time, there was concerns that are also raised by Rand Water in terms of the high consumption that we're experiencing in almost all municipalities in Gauteng, which requires us to also make a call to the residents who have water that they should also be able to use it sparingly, so that it allows us to can balance the system and push the water reservoirs to other areas and pump water to areas which are battling with the water currently. So, yeah.
So that is an issue of water, and one that is still got a long way to fix. The same thing goes for the power and the outages that we are seeing. 800 outages reported in just 2 weeks in January. That's how many outages were reported in the city of Johannesburg. There's a 170 billion rand electricity infrastructure backlog, historic debt, 4.9 billion rand to Eskom, 1.4 billion current account debt. These are numbers that are drowning the city. Now, we've spoken about water, which is a huge problem. Electricity is still a very, very big problem as well. There's theft, there's vandalism, there's illegal connections. What do we do here? How do we fix the situation when it comes to electricity and the supply in Johannesburg?
Well, generally the issues around vandalism requires government, private sector and law enforcement agencies that we must continue to put our efforts together to push back against vandalism and infrastructure that is being destroyed by criminals. So it is our work that we must do together. Let me just touch a bit on the electricity infrastructure, which at this stage we are probably not so bad. We know the areas where we are battling. We know the investment that is required, and we are putting the investment, especially as it relates to our substations in particular, which requires attention. So we've been able to segment them and say this one's at the bad situation, they need agent attention. This one's not so bad. Others is a relation to old technology that requires to be refurbished. So we are focused. In terms of our debt with Eskom, we entered into an agreement with Eskom and we are paying Eskom. It was about 1.8 billion that we then settled at a particular amount between the city and Eskom. And we are paying that as we pay our current account. We are paying our bulk services for both water and electricity on time with no issues, and that is why we don't have issues with Eskom and Rent Order in terms of payments.
What about City Power? Can we talk about City Power? Because there's been words that they are basically essentially insolvent. Can you confirm that? Are they insolvent?
Well, the issue that we are dealing with is to address the overdraft at City Power, which over the years has been accumulating as a result of exactly the challenges that we are speaking to, which are infrastructure related, and it has pushed the cost or the overdraft higher. However, as part of finance department decisions was to push back on the overdraft, and we have put systems in place to ensure that we can push back and reduce the current overdraft at City Power, so that City Power can at least be financially stable. At this stage, it is still not insolvent because there are systems that we have put in place.
But you even look at something like an electricity meter that hasn't been repaired in over a year. These are some of the reports that you actually get there, and making proper revenue collection almost impossible. And then we look at some of the bills that we get, and they are completely not right because they cannot measure them correctly. So, I mean, how much revenue would you say that the city has actually lost because of pure incompetence of the work that should be done, but that's not being done?
We're currently billing at about 6.2 billion, and that's what we bill month to month, and we have a responsibility to collect. Our collection ranges between 4.5 billion, and when we have done better, it goes up to 5 billion. Would want to push it to 6 billion. There are challenges there in that environment, and part of the challenges is what you're talking about, where we've got inaccurate bills that continue to escalate, and it's as a result of what you feed in the system. If you feed wrong information, you are likely, of course, to have wrong bills. But what we would encourage is when customers are faced with inaccurate bills, we request them to come forward so that we can focus on that particular bill itself and resolve the problem so that the problem does not recur. But yes, we do admit there are instances, probably about 5% to 8% of inaccurate bills that from month to month we're experiencing, and the teams constantly enter a process of resolving those bills. And there are some success rates in relation to resolution of queries.
So, Mayor, you sit here and you take accountability because this is your city. And I mean, we look around the city, and unfortunately, yes, we're sitting in a beautiful area, but if we just have to literally walk maybe 500 meters down the road into an area that I don't think you can hold your head up high and say, I am proud to be the mayor of the city. I mean, if we walk into the inner city where there are hijacked buildings, where there are people all over, it is completely overpopulated. There are illegal immigrants that are sitting within the city that has become a city slum, an inner city slum. This is something that you cannot be proud of. And yet we look at it and it doesn't ever get better. It just gets worse and worse and worse. And people are moving out of the city of Johannesburg, which must be having a very big impact on your bottom line as well. What are you doing about hijacked buildings, the crime situation in the city of Johannesburg, and illegal immigrants, which is a very big problem?
Well, as you say, I can walk you into Uval now and you'll see the changes that we're doing. The work that the councillor has been doing with NGOs in the area to keep Rocky Street and all other streets around the precinct much cleaner and much safer. So there's work that's being done gradually in that area of Uval. There's work we're doing in the CBD of Johannesburg that you can now go and evaluate the work that has been done through North Street, Plain Street, De Villiers, and of course Lillian Goye, and you'll begin to see that yes, there are changes that are beginning to emerge. We just need to accelerate on the programs that we're doing in the inner city. Challenges of hijacked buildings are there. They are huge. We're focusing on the bad buildings. However, I must upfront indicate that we've got a constitutional court judgment which says once you evacuate and remove people from a building, you must provide alternative accommodation. Now, that's one area that we're trying to work with the private sector to be able to help us. Once we can strengthen that area, we'd know that we'll be able to move with speed in resolving bad buildings in the area.
But what about changing legislation when it comes to that?
Well, it's a constitutional court.
It is, but how do we do this?
And of course, our legal teams must find a way. If there's a way to challenge it, we'll be glad.
Would you consider challenging it?
It will be beautiful to do that.
So why don't you do it?
No, remember, it's a constitutional court, and I'm told by our experts, legal experts, that whilst it's a constitutional court decision, remember the constitutional court is the highest court in the land, it becomes a different terrain. But hopefully at some point they'll present a better proposal on how do we go around this constitutional court judgment. But I must say it's a serious impediment in as far as us being able to resolve and deal with bad buildings decisively. But it is also important to note that there are huge syndicates that are involved in bad buildings and hijacking of buildings. And would need to find a way, working with SABC in particular, to crack down the syndicates that continue. You can buy a building today, renovate, get the right tenants. You'll be lucky if in the next 3, 4, 5 years it's not hijacked. So we have to find ways of how do we crack the syndicate so that on a sustainable base, this thing does not come back. I know that the city is doing efforts. I know that private property owners are working with us so that we can claim back these buildings from hijackers or syndicates that are all over the city.
Problem is you talk to involving the SABC and law enforcement in this, and then we sit as soon as we end our program and we listen to how the law enforcement agencies unfortunately are not doing their job. And this is one of the biggest problems, and that a lot of the times you actually find that those people that are in the positions of power are actually involved in this corruption, and then we never see anybody being held accountable. We look and we read about people in the city of Johannesburg where basically in your office there are people that are underqualified for the positions that they're in, that there are political deployees, there are senior officials that should never be in their positions and they should be honestly facing arrest, and yet they are allowed to run and be in the city and be in very influential positions. That this, you can never ever fix it, and that is a big problem. And people complain about this and they just say that nobody is ever held accountable and the wrong people are not doing the right thing. What do you say about things like that?
Well, council holds us accountable. We do have council almost every month where reports are presented to council, and council holds the executive to account on the programs that we are doing. Where there are instances of people who are not qualified to be in their job, which those matters should be raised with us so that we are able to respond. For example, if the city goes out on an advert, it will specify the requirements for that particular position, and once you interview people, the people who then apply and get shortlisted and invited to interviews are those that would have met the minimum requirements that are on the advert. Now, there's an issue about competence. Yes, there are instances where you've got leadership incompetence in the management of the city, something that from time to time I address. And how do I address this? Is meeting directly with senior management in those departments to try and address issues of lack of efficiency amongst or within those particular departments. So it's something that from time to time, as the mayoral committee, we have a responsibility to address.
What about an institutional review? Apparently there hasn't been one since 2002. That's 24 years ago.
We are undergoing an institutional review.
But this has been undergoing for how many years? And for 2 years, this has been something that's been on the top of the agenda, and it's not been done. And in the meantime, we're seeing a bloated municipality. We're seeing too many people working there. This last review that happened 24 years ago, you yourself said at the beginning of this interview that Joburg is overpopulated. There are so many people that have come here, and yet we have no institutional review of this.
Well, the population would not necessarily impact on the institutional review, but what is critical for us is that last year we approved a budget towards that institutional review, and an entity or a consulting company has also been appointed to help us go through the process of an institutional review. And I suppose where we are, work has started in terms of that program, and soon we will complete, so that going into the new term, you must have then completed the new institutional review. And when the new government is appointed, the program would have been completed and report presented. Remember, there's been political changes since 2016, or rather, that has, of course, indicated some level of coalition governments that have been changing from time to time. We've now been stable since 2023 with a constant constant coalition. There have been changes of mayors, but the basic solid coalition that has been in government since 2023, which has helped us to push some of this program. You know that even the disciplinary board was not in place to deal with issues around unauthorized expenditures. Now we do have a proper disciplinary board which we have put in place. So there are things that are happening, and there's a lot of great things that are also happening. Whilst there are negatives in the city, there's positives that we are doing in the city.
And you have proved it. When we host a G20, the roads look amazing, and suddenly they're all being retarred and the potholes are filled, and then the big leaders move away and that work stops. And I live here and I can confirm that, because I drive on roads, and just this weekend I got a puncture again from the roads. And I speak for a lot of Joburg residents, because I'm just reading just some of the comments that come in here. This is from somebody saying roses are red. The good is some of our councillors who work tirelessly to restore water and electricity, which has been so badly neglected for 31 years. The bad is scary, having to travel into the actual city overrun with disrespectful taxi drivers, with filth and with garbage. That's one comment. Another comment from Sidwell saying there's nothing to write home about Gauteng, because we have an MEC of Health who tells us most pregnant women prefer to sleep on the floor in hospitals. You can leave your bed and choose to sleep on the floor in a hospital. There's a serious infrastructure decay in public hospitals. And unfortunately, Mayor, these are the ones that are coming up more and more and more. Here's another one, and this is from Evelyn saying, we grew up knowing Gauteng is a beautiful province, but after 1994, things got messy, and a little bit until now, all the citizens are suffering with everything. We are crying for our beloved country. I've just read you three, and this is sad.
Well, I think I listened to the video interview of the MEC and came to a conclusion to understand the context of what the MEC was saying, and she confirmed that indeed there are bets, but there are instances where a patient herself decides on that particular time that I'm not going, depending on the levels of pain or whatever, that I'll rather sleep on the floor. She has explained the context of that situation and confirmed that she also delivered beds in the Vereeniging Van der Bijl Park over the week. So in essence, there are challenges though in our health department, and we all know that it has been overstretched, but they're doing everything they can to ensure that at least patients are taken care of. It will not entirely be correct to say that Gauteng is not beautiful anymore, unless the space in which myself and you are in now is not beautiful. There are areas that requires attention.
And that's why we started there.
Rosebank, we still have Sandton, we still have Rodiport. Yes, there are challenges with infrastructure, especially on the potholes, which our departments are pushing. They're doing everything they can to ensure that we deal with roads resurfacing. We think that this year's budget will also be increased towards trying to deal with our road infrastructure. But over and above, we're also focused on our bridges, which have also are collapsing. They require attention, they require money, they require resources, and our responsibility now is also to partner with the private sector, with national government, to raise those resources to help us to deal with those things urgently. There are instances where I believe that the city has done great. There's new infrastructure that we have brought. There are clinics that we have brought. I know that in Ward 133, we are now completing a clinic right inside Ivory Park, right in the township, to ensure that at least people do gain access. In the same neighboring ward, we have completed a swimming pool where the area never had a swimming pool. Now young people have access to now go and swim, and possibly in the near future will produce a swimming champion, an athletic champion coming from Ivory Park. So there is work being done. There are challenges, but let's also accept that there are positives in the work that we're doing.
Fair enough, Mayor. We leave it there. We thank you so much for talking to us. This is definitely not enough time to get into it, but I have even run into news time. But, you know, Mayor, when we talk about very serious issues, certainly we know there are beautiful spaces, and we know that. But the bottom line is that residents are struggling. They are struggling, and they want the services that they're paying for, particularly in areas that they are paying very high amounts, and they still don't get that. And this is a very big problem that we need to look into. And I know you've been telling us how you're going to do it. And this is why we have segments like this, so that you're able to answer directly to those that are paying for their services that they're not receiving. So, Mayor, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us on this first segment that we've got, where we're going to be hosting various mayors from around the country and different cities that are going to talk about this. And I know, Joburg, there are many, many more issues we need to talk about. But I hope that the Mayor managed to address some of the major concerns that we've got.